Hey guys, welcome to the second video of the URL Shortener project with Golang backend using Go, Fiverr, and Redis and Docker Compose. So what we'll do is we'll open up our shorten.go file right now. We had completed our main.go file in the previous video. And here we had also created our request and response objects. Now the most important function of this entire project is going to be the shorten URL function, which is called whenever you hit this API/v1 with post. That means you're going to send the URL to be shortened to this function, and this function is going to do all the magic for you to shorten that URL. So there will be a function called shorten URL, and just make sure you match these two functions match basically spelling wise. So shorten URL is the same function. This is the function that's going to be called, and what you're going to pass is fiber.context. So fiber.ctx, and this function returns an error in case something goes wrong. Now the first thing that you'll do in this function is you will have a body which is going to be a new request struct, completely empty for the time being, and then we'll use our body parser function that we'll get as part of our Fiber package in order to parse the JSON that we get as part of the request into the struct that's understood by Golang. This is why we'll use the body parser function. So go ahead and write if error is equal to c.body parser function. Inside that, you'll pass a reference to body, this variable that you just created, which is of type request. So this is the type of data that you'll get from this data, the JSON data. And you'll also check for error. If error is not equal to nil, I'm going to return c.status. The status in this case is fiber.bad request. So we'll say status bad request dot JSON fiber.map, and you'll also write the actual error. In this case, error is cannot parse JSON. So you created a variable called body. It was of type request, which is a struct that you have defined already on your own. And then you used body parser to make sense of the request that was received from the user to convert it into a struct that's understood by Golang. Now you'll have to implement rate limiting here. So we'll write some code to implement rate limiting, wherein we'll check the IP of the user who's calling this function right now. We'll check the IP, and we'll see if the IP has been stored in our database or not. If it's been already there in the database, that means the user has already used our service. So we'll have to decrement the number of rate remaining by 1. So we want to allow him to call this API 10 times over a period of 30 minutes. So every 30 minutes it will reset. So in the period of 30 minutes, we'll check if that IP address already exists in the database, in our database. And then if that's the case, we're going to decrement his rate by 1. And that's the code we'll write here. And then we'll write some code to check if the input sent by the user is an actual URL or not. Okay. Then we'll also there's something that the user can do, which is that he'll use localhost 3000 as the URL to get shortened, and then our program can enter into an in-flight loop. So we don't want that to happen. So so we'll have to keep some code in our helpers package to be able to stop that, and that's the function that we'll call from here. So we'll say check for domain error, and we'll also want to enforce HTTPS, which is basically SSL. We want to enforce SSL. So let's do that. Let's first work with checking if the input is an actual URL. So we'll say if go validator dot is URL, and we'll pass body dot URL here. If it's not, then we'll say c.status fiber.status bad request, and the error will be here invalid URL. Cool. Now we'll check for the domain error, where basically the user may abuse our URL shortener by giving localhost 3000 itself, and it'll lead to an infinite loop. So we want to stop that. So we'll say if not helpers, which is our helpers package, we'll create this function there. And the function name that we'll create will be remove domain error, and we'll pass body.url there, and we're going to return c.status. It will be fiber.status service unavailable .json fiber.map. The error is you can't hack the system, and you'll just create a nice smiley there. Actually, let me create a reverse smiley. Okay. So if somebody's trying to hack it or create an error or send our program into an infinite loop, we're going to say the error is you can't hack the system. Now we want to enforce SSL. So we'll say body.url is equal to helpers dot enforce HTTP body.url. Okay, so there's going to be obviously a lot more in this file, but for now let's keep it this much. And now let me create these two functions there in our helpers. At least let's create the outline of these two functions. Sorry, I have a lot of cough. Okay, so go over to your helpers.go file, and here, as you know, you'll have a function called enforce HTTP, which you just call here, enforce HTTP, and you will have a function called remove domain error. So firstly, this is going to take some things, and it's going to return a string simply, and the other function is going to be remove domain error, going to be a URL, which will be a string, and it's going to return a boolean. And all you do here is basically you say if URL 4 is not equal to HTTP, then return HTTP. So you're making sure that everything is going over HTTP protocol, and you're going to return the URL. And for your domain error, you're going to say, how do you remove domain error? You're going to check, you say if URL is equal to os.get environment domain, which is from your environment file, the domain variable, which is localhost 3000. So if the URL that you're passing, that the user is trying to pass to abuse our program, is passing it equal to domain, which is localhost 3000, then you're going to return false. And you'll say new URL is equal to strings.replace URL comma HTTP comma empty comma 1. So we want to remove all the commonly found prefixes. So for example, let me give you an example actually here. The user might say localhost 3000, but he might also say HTTP localhost 3000 or HTTPS localhost 3000 or www.localhost 3000. So we want to firstly remove all of those. So that's what we're doing. We're just ensuring that there is no way the user is able to hack our system. So we'll say strings.replace new URL comma, and here he'll say HTTPS, and if it found HTTPS, it's going to just make it empty. And again, the URL is equal to strings dot replace new URL comma here. Actually, I forgot to put a comma here. So there should be a comma here. URL comma www dot empty comma 1, and the last one new URL strings dot split new URL comma slash, and at the end you'll select the first element. So it's if new URL is equal to os.get env domain, and again you want to return false. So firstly you'll check if URL is equal to domain, which is localhost 3000. If it is the case, then you will return false. And again, if the user is even smarter and he's using HTTP, HTTPS, www. or just slash there, we want to remove all of those and then again check if the new URL is equal to domain. And again we'll return false. Otherwise we'll just return true if everything sounds okay. So these are the two functions that I wanted to create basically in this file, in this video. And now you want to also check for the packages. So here, firstly, you want this to be package helpers because that's how we have imported it there. So you want it to be package helpers. And secondly, you want to import two things, right? One is OS, which you use out here, and the other is strings, which you use out here. So I have these two packages here. Makes sense. And I'll keep this video, I'll end this video here. And in the next video, which is going to come out tomorrow or day after, we're going to work a little more on our shortened URL function. The function is going to be actually quite long. And then we'll create some more, other files if required, like the resolve.go file. But helpers, I think we won't need any more helpers. This much is enough. And I'll create some, and I'll create this database.go file as well in the next video. So in case you haven't subscribed till now, do subscribe because I come up with this awesome kind of content, and I hope you're enjoying. I hope everything is making sense. Everything is quite easy, and it's at the intermediate level. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.